T-minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Launch Sequence Podcast, Christmas edition. Yay! I think we gotta. Yeah.
Happy Luminalia.
Yeah.
Happy
Luminalia edition.
everyone.
Yeah.
You know,
Folks,
Christmas,
the year is coming to a
Hanukkah,
close.
holidays.
Christmas, Hanukkah. The
Yeah.
year is coming to a close. The year of playability has passed us by, and next year is already looking like it's turning back into feature development and experimentation. We can see with the additions of Engineering, Vulkan, VR. Things are changing, but I want to look back at the previous year, or rather this year, and what happened. The highlights, the downfalls, the decent times, how's performance changed? Has it actually gotten more playable? And what are we thinking is leading into next year? For this, I have brought the historian himself, the Astro Historian, probably most common guest on this podcast, but kind of, we generally, when we want to have one of these big, wide-reaching topics, I'd love to have you on to have a chat. So thank you for joining me today.
Always happy to be on. There's a nickname that my community has given me, which is Lorstradamus.
Yes.
So it is appropriate that you brought the man who predicted Knicks. And I'm not braggadocious about that. It's not like I bring it up every single chance I get. The fact that I called Knicks out being the fifth system 2 years before anyone's even thought it existed. But no, I'm very humble about it. I don't like to talk about that all the time.
I didn't know before this.
Yes.
It is nice to have the Knicks system in, but as we'll talk about today, it's maybe not so.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, not Knicks. Castra. I called
Castra.
being
the. Okay.
Yeah. The fifth system. I'm sorry, Knicks. Knicks is bad.
Knicks
is
third
came
system.
in this year. Knicks is third system. Yeah, but Castra. Oh yeah,
Castra's a fourth system.
Well, fourth system. But it was confusing. We all knew that Terra was going to come in as one of the systems. But it was like, well, what's the other system? We know we have Knicks, Castra, or Knicks, Stanton, and Pyro, and Terra. So what's the last system? And I was like, it's going to be Castra, and everyone was like, no. And then 2 years later, it happens, and like I felt so much vindication. I'm never going to let it down. It's like the logic worked. So if my logic worked then, it must work for other things.
It must work for other. So tell me that Squadron 42 is coming out next year. Then
it is.
We could back it up.
It's going to come out like a kidney stone, but it's going to come out.
That's not what you want to hear at all. But today is going to be a talk about Star Citizen, not Squadron 42. And particularly, it's been an interesting year, a record-breaking year. They just passed $150 million raised. It has also become the highest account opening year, I guess, since 2022. The only higher one is 2022. What I mean by that is like new players joined. But if you say new players joined, then everybody will point out that it's extra accounts. It's every year there are extra accounts made. This year is the second highest there's ever been. So they have made good progress from last year in both the funding, in attracting new players, and for most people I talk to in terms of adding new content and creating more interesting scenarios for people. So I want to talk about kind of what that path was throughout the year and how you think they did overall. Let's start with how you were feeling in the beginning of the year. 4.0 was in the preview channel. 3.24.3 was the live update, so it was pre-server meshing. The server sizes were still 100 people. We were in one star system, but things were working fairly well.
4.0 was not as much of a disaster as 3.18. But it was the siren song of the year. 4.0 set the stage for all of the other patches to come forward, which has become, in my opinion, one of the biggest problems CIG currently has, which is it works on my system.
Like in the office?
Well, not just in the office. It's like some players experience bugs, other players don't.
Oh, right.
And the players that experience the bugs literally cannot log into their account, but the players that don't are having the time of their lives. And it's like a game of Russian roulette. You never know when you're going to be, which patch is going to be the one that kills your account for an entire patch or for multiple like hot fixes and stuff like that. And that sort of difficult to deal with. And that was really one of the biggest problems with 4.0 was, yes, it was unstable, which was, we'll talk about that one reason why it's called the Year of Stability. But the biggest problem outside of the normal growing pains of it was the first time they'd introduced server meshing, there were going to be bugs, was the fact that it wasn't a consistent across the board problem. Like 3.18, people just couldn't play the game. you know, you couldn't get in, you know. And performance was at bad, crashing all the time. But it was like everyone had that problem.
Yeah, I would say in terms of worst patch releases, I would put 3.18 at the worst. I'd put 3.0 then, and then I would say 4.0 probably comes in after that. Because in terms of major releases they've had, 4.0 was, I think it was more disappointing than it was like a disaster. You know, it lost engineering. The maintenance missions weren't in. Pyro didn't have its solar flare. They even took the rings off of Pyro 4. A lot of like racing and courier missions and stuff were missing. Like it was just a deflating patch compared to what it was supposed to be. But performance-wise, I still think 3.0 was rougher, and then 3.18, like you said, people couldn't even log in.
2.0 was worse than all of those, but that was
before my time.
That was before your time, but that was again one of those. It was a huge revolution. It was a step up as the PU was introduced. So the joke seconds per frame was the big one for that. 20 FPS was good at 2.0. So plus we also were rush. It would crash so often that we had crash timers, and if it ran for more than an hour, that was impressive. So the average was like 10 minutes for the game crash. It's the reason why we have the Evocati in the first place, is because it was in PTU for like Wave 1 PTU for like 2 months. And CIG was like, we can't do this. We need to take the Wave 1 PTU and move it into a new closed testing group, which they call the Evocati. So
before this year, the 3.x branch, you're talking about 2.0 being the introduction of the PU. 3.0 was kind of the introduction of their real vision for the PU. And landing. And so like both of those numbers represented something in their development. 4.0 kicked in now. And so they made like a pretty big change to kick it off, right? It's not necessarily their whole point going forward, but it was their point for 2025 as the like, we reached 4.0, we got server meshing, now we're taking a step back to focus on playability. What was your understanding from that talk at the beginning of the year? And how did that set your expectations for the rest of the year?
The biggest problem at the time was that server meshing was causing cycle crashes where one server would crash and you'd be stuck inside that server, so you couldn't get back out and that server would never come back. Or you would be caught in a forever loop, if you remember that, where you would it would crash and then be recovering, and then it would recover and then crash again, because the thing that crashed it in the first place was respawning.
Yeah, and at that point, people were like, "Wait a second, this is a fundamental flaw with server meshing. This will never work."
Yeah, but I mean, they eventually fixed it. It was one of those. It still had a lot of problems. So when Benoit came on to talk to Jared about like the Year of Stability and the Year of Playability, it was clear that the main focus was this technology is still new. We got it in barely, but we got it in, and now we need to have time to actually find all the problems. And so they just didn't have the resources or manpower to actually do anything else but find those problems. That's what that always seemed like to me when they were talking about at the beginning of this year, like what the plans were going to be. I knew it was going to get misinterpreted, because when you hear Year of Playability, everyone thinks, oh, my personal bug or my personal thing that I dislike is going to get fixed. But regardless, it seems to have worked, considering what we've seen now, only because that relentless patch march that they've done is quite insane. I think they've only missed 2 months without a patch, which was March, I want to say. And was it June? Yeah, March and June were the only ones that didn't have patches. Or was it May? March and May? Yeah, it was March and May, I think.
Yeah, because May was built off of... No, I think May had one for Invictus.
Yeah, but it was Invictus. Invictus is in June, so Invictus had a patch, didn't it?
No, Invictus is May. Alien Week's in
Invictus
June.
is May. Oh,
Yeah.
right. So it was June. I think it was June that didn't have a patch. July had a patch.
Okay.
So
it was
yeah,
definitely an insane rate. I mean, by the time we were getting the live patch, the next one was like starting to hit Evocati a month. It was pretty nuts.
And that was insane to see at the beginning because I was skeptical they could hit that cadence, and they did. They did. 100%. They did hit that even early on. That was insane.
So that was, and just take a step back real quick. When they said playability, it wasn't just stability, right?
No, it was. They said they wanted to focus on content.
Yeah.
Like gameplay and such.
Yeah. So stability, playability, or stability, performance, and content are the three things they said they were focusing on. And so the 10 patches throughout the year obviously is a chance to deliver a lot of those. Do you think throughout those 10 patches, though, they kept like an ever rising improvement on those three fronts, or was it kind of bumpy?
This is controversial because I think that the same problem, as I said, alluded at the beginning, which is it works on my machine problem, was consistent throughout most of the year. The inconsistency of the bugs was one of the most consistent things, where different people would catch strays from the patch, and it would be a random guess on who was going to get it. It wasn't like the same people. So that definitely soured a lot of people. I know plenty of people who play this game pretty much every day and have played it pretty much every day for 3 years, who effectively got burned out by the end of this year because of those problems. Where it's like they see their friend playing, but they can't play because of the bug. So personally, I think they got better. They learned from their mistakes and improved. But of course, as you improve, you discover new problems and then continue to try to fix those problems. And if I was to say one thing about the cadence in terms of like able to keep that up, it felt like CIG was more optimistic about all of those three than they actually were capable of doing. Pretty typical CIG. But it didn't feel malicious. It just felt like, and I wouldn't say competence either, because incompetence implies that like they just didn't know what they were doing. I think they knew what they were doing. They just misinterpreted how long it would take and how deep the problems were. Like a great example of this is the resource rush. Resource rush is, in my opinion, the high of the year. It's one of the best events next to, in terms of like limited events, it was the best limited event of the entire year. I think ironically, we only had like 4 limited events, despite everyone screaming FOMO all the time.
Yeah, I think so. Because we had Hunt the Polaris, which was barely an event. And then we had the Fight for Pyro one in the beginning. We had the Resource Rush. And just recently, didn't we have something in November?
Yeah, they reused the Hunt the Polaris. It's the death of the Frontier Fighters.
Yeah.
So, fun fact: Amelia Boyd's body is on display in Checkmate Station.
Display. I love that. Very pyro of them.
Yeah, she's chained to the structure at the very entrance of the station. So
I see. Good for her.
Yes,
glad she got to find her place in pyro.
I was going to say those 4 events. I think the best was Resource Rush, with the most latest one sort of being kind of not as good. But the Resource Rush problem the problems with Resource Rush stemmed from something they knew was a problem and had intended to fix. In fact, had started to fix it a month before, but then just completely did not understand the scale of the problem. So like that's kind of another example of like how I feel like the progression went. It went 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It was progressing and it was getting better every time, but there was always something that was being uncovered that was causing problems that they had to then fix for the next patch, or then, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Which is kind of, in different ways, still their same problem that they used to have.
Yes. And
that actually brings up a great segue into the next part, which is basically, what were the problems they used to have? What kind of held the game back before 4.0, which I guess is kind of what Chris was talking about in his letter from the chairman before.
A couple things. Generally speaking, the gameplay was inconsistent. So like there was no buy-in and reason to do things. And there's lack of gameplay, like lack of content and missions. If I remember correctly, we would cheer in the 3.0 branches when we got a single mission added.
Yeah, dude. No, there were no missions added for like years.
Yeah, and in 4.0 we would get like every mission would have like a new every patch would have like a new mission chain of like 3 or 4 missions added to it. Be it, you know, something like Hathor or ASD facility, or like the bounty hunting missions or the ambush missions or the like all of those
the ghillie
new
stuff
missions that the new ghillie missions. So the lack of missions was one thing. This is my personal belief, and I think in retrospect people would agree with me, which is the lack of buy-in, because no one reads mission details. You know, if you want to play a game, you want someone talking to you, you want to interact with them. It's a video game, not a book. So they needed some sort of interaction, and we got the arrival or return of voiceover for mission givers plus video for mission givers. And I think that added a whole lot more connection to the limited events and to the wider new stories and being told by the new missions and such.
And just the basic stuff too. Like you were saying, just a regular mercenary space-based mission, you actually get somebody to talk to you now.
Mm-hmm. You get to know who these people are, you know. And I think that really shined with the resource rush, because everyone grew attached to the contractors of the different companies.
Yep.
Like I think it was Trisha. I think Trish was the one who was at ArcCorp. I loved her. She's my favorite. But everyone else hated the guy who was the
Hurston dude, right?
The Hurston dude, because he kept like passive aggressively hating on them for failing content.
And that's fantastic, man. That was one of the things I heard talked about most was the contractors, and people, you know, will kind of pass off lore. But that's bringing people into the game. A lot of people picked their company, picked their planet, you know, their loyalty, and that's part of being able to be part of a MMO community. So I do think, even though that's not necessarily hardcore gameplay, that is still adding to the quote unquote playability of the game.
Yeah, and that's my argument, was that it was not something that I think a lot of people thought about. Yeah, I thought about it a lot, but I always thought that like when it happens and when it starts coming in, it will start creating more buy-in for the average player. And by creating that buy-in for the average player, it becomes better for everyone involved, because now suddenly people feel more connected to the verse, which, you know, all that sort of like improves things in general, that kind of thing.
So the game overall was really struggling with that. And I think what they said at the beginning of the year was something like, if we fixed a lot of the problems and, you know, got out of the way of the players playing the game, we feel like it would be a good game. You guys would enjoy it. Do you feel like they accomplished that?
Making a good game that people enjoyed?
Ooh. Do you think they improved that aspect of it? Yeah. Yeah. How do you think they did from that perspective?
Yes, 100%. They improved it. Like, I always like to say, from our perspective, you and I who play the game frequently, the funniest thing that I hear is accusations is that you and I don't play the game. People like you and I don't play the game. We just talk about it. And it's like, we play the game sometimes daily, guys. Like, we know all of the little rituals and workarounds. Tomato just came off of a 30-hour stream for over the course of 2 days that he did for his birthday. Happy birthday, by the way. So like, we play the game frequently, and I will say the biggest thing that I saw from people I've seen in my chat and seen play, came back to play with, is a lot of folks who left the game 2-3 years ago and came back this year were like, there's so much more now. there's so much more to do. There's so much more space. There's so much more things. I know people who refused to leave Stanton when Pyro came in because they're like, I don't want to go to Pyro.
Yeah.
Just because of the reputation of Pyro, even though I would say Pyro is probably more calm than even Stanton is, but people who probably still won't even go to Nyx because of the same thing. And that sort of shows you the sort of giving players more choice and rewarding them is definitely something they did this year. And I think they did a very good job of it in the cumulative, in the aggregate. Not necessarily individual. Every patch wasn't necessarily a great leap forward in gameplay, but now that we stare back at the year of 2025, we have the Hathor facilities. We have the Lazarus facilities for ASD. We've got the Onyx facilities for ASD. All of them have their own unique gameplay loops and gameplay. We have
and with the Pharos facilities.
Well, the Pharos facilities, the Lazarus. The Pharos and Lazarus are the same. They're like the twin facilities. But yeah, they're their own
different loops though. Yeah.
And then you have the script, the mercenary script and the mercenary guild script and the council script, which are handed out by the two different factions, by headhunters or by I forgot their name, the security faction, for doing those new missions. Foxwell, yeah. And then on top of that, you've got Foxwell and Hammerhead, Headhunters missions to like Hathor and other locations, like Onyx and stuff like that to do missions. At the end of the year, we got a brand new faction with the Dead Saints, and they have a whole smuggling mission route where you actually smuggle people in cryopods across.
I was wondering how you were feeling about smuggling starting to come in.
I love it. I'm here, especially when if it's it's Ticia Pacheco, who in lore is scary. That woman will kill all of us and go home at night and sleep very well. She is intense at the best way, and the fact that she's like kind of the vanguard of smuggling gameplay, I'm like, thank you. I can have the scary woman on my side.
Honestly, she's been sitting out on that outcropping in the city for like 3 years straight. Anybody who can do that without going crazy is scary. Respect. But yeah, the mission givers, the narrative, the people talking, combined with all of the things that you just mentioned. I mean, even the fact that one of my favorite things that they've done this year is the quote unquote events that I just call a new location, honestly, that are permanent in the game are never going to be boring for someone. And I think there are some really good ways CIG can utilize them to make them always be relevant to people. But just the fact that like these are locations that you might get sent to for some reason and then stumble across the story, and hopefully the world building gets a bit better, but like they guide you through this story naturally and you get to see what happens from Hathor to Onyx. That I love that because I keep going back to them. It's not just about some playing out story or competition you're doing. They're useful places.
Yeah. They're it's the content itself is also the gameplay. That's kind of where kind of was like charging towards was that like to answer your question overall. Yeah, it did make the game more fun and more playable, but you kind of have to see it in the aggregate to really appreciate it. When you're looking at it in a very close up way, you're seeing broken mission, this new thing is broken. I don't like this. This thing's causing problems. But when you pull back and you go, oh, I can still do the Hathor. Oh, Hathor works now. Okay, cool. Oh, I can do Onyx. Oh, I can do the full spectrum of Onyx now. Okay. So it's a matter of perspective in terms of how close you are to a topic. And so for people who are close to the topic right now, no, everything is broken and doesn't work well. But if you pull back and go, well, what about a mission that you did 2 patches ago? Oh, it's working now. And I think that's what matters more, only because this was a year of new players and old players coming back and new players coming in. So they were able to experience a lot of that stuff that we kind of chew through very quickly. If that makes sense.
I do still run into some problems. We got Hathored, unfortunately, the other night, and we had to like fly across the moon to the other location to get it to work. But I was pleased that it is still working somewhat. You know, a lot of this year, people have been saying everything that gets dropped in. I had like a whole Twitter argument with people because I was like, these aren't events. These are new locations. They're storylines. They're not going anywhere. People are getting FOMO over things that are not going to be limited in time. And people would say, well, because these things break after the next update and they move on to the next new thing, we see them as events. I don't I don't think that makes them an event, but I get where they're coming from, and I do think
Yeah.
that it's good to come back at the end of the year and see that these things can run. They are having some problems, but it means that we have a ton more content at the beginning of or the end of the year than we did at the beginning.
Yeah.
But we are still missing some missions we had in 3.24. Like I think racing is completely gone still. So I don't know what their plans are with that kind of stuff. What do you think the deal is with those? Because I guess they're rebuilding them, but like they're missing quite a few.
They're missing racing, but they're also missing the Ghost Hollow, which is one of those like I bring up a lot because it used to be like the prototype for the Hathor type missions that we see
Yeah.
now. It's just gone. It's there, but it's just broken. Um, I think the issue, the honest to God answer is, I think CIG is going to end up in a similar situation like they do with ships, where nobody wants to fix some other person's problem. Just think about it in this way, from an engineering standpoint. Someone designs a new house or like an engine, right? Designs a new engine, stops about halfway through because they reached problems. That does design sit on a shelf for 5 years, and then you get hired on to work for this engineering firm, and the first thing they do is hand you these plans of something you don't have any notes for, that you just see the plans and that's it, and you're told it's supposed to do this. Do you A, fix it exactly as it's supposed to be and release it, or scrap the whole thing and start something brand new that does the same thing?
That sounds like a really bad problem to have.
Yes. I know you have an engineering background. That's why I'm trying to think of that perspective. And for people who do have perspectives, do you want to complete a project that somebody else half finished and then walked away,
Yeah.
or would you rather just come up with a new solution to the same problem? And I think that's what the issue is with those missing missions. Is how many of them were missions designed for the patch they were released in and not designed for 1.0. So I do think some of those things are just going to end up getting cut and like thrown away. We talk a lot about the racing being added by like as a kind of a side project by their own standalone team doing it on their own time. And the second it broke, it's gone. We don't see it again.
That's true. I forgot about that it was not a like main prerogative.
Yeah. So it's just not like racing is not going to come back until that either that team has priority to do it, or the mission team actually goes back and looks at it and fixes it, which sucks, but
Yeah, because the delivery missions that disappeared have finally come back. I think it's 4.4
this patch.
or is it 4.5?
Yeah. It might have been this patch. I think it's this patch or the last patch. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was the 4.4 branch, but they started out in Pyro earlier in the year, and then now I'm seeing them in Stanton as well. I don't know about Nyx, but those are incredibly good missions. Anybody who is listening to this who might be thinking about getting into Star Citizen or just has and is looking for good beginner content, these don't pay the best, but these kind of delivery focused courier missions where you take like 1 or 2 boxes to a place where you go out and retrieve like a black box from a ship in a derelict. You might run into some combat. It'll say in the mission description, but these are a great way to learn how to fly, to see the system, to like get the basic mechanics down, all in a pretty low risk environment.
Yeah.
I'm glad those are back. Those are really good ones.
The box missions were always really good for that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So you feel like the game did get better, and people are coming back saying like there's a lot more content to take part in. How about the feature side of things? Because that's, I think, where a lot of people are thinking, yeah, the playability may have gotten better, but the game didn't really move towards 1.0. And you guys keep saying you're going to release this game. And when are you going to release the game if you're not working on features? How do you feel like they handled the feature delivery this year compared to maybe what they were setting out in terms of plans at the beginning of the year?
Awful. It was terrible. Chris did the very the thing we all thought he was going to do, or not all thought, I think we hoped he wasn't going to do, but he has done frequently, which is when he's told something, he goes into excessive detail about what the plan is. And then the second that plan hits any sort of like bump, the entire plan goes out the window, and they hope that we forgot that plan was the plan in the first place. Because you and I remember EPTU because Chris said it only a year ago that they're going to do this new EPTU cycle, and we've had zero. And so it's proof that CIG just could not handle feature development at the same time as gameplay. They needed one or the other. They couldn't do both. And I don't know if it's because they don't have enough teams. I honestly think it's because they don't have enough QA, and they fired a lot of their QA members in downsizing they did when they lost LA. But there's some problem. Could be that people who are QA are being siphoned off to go work for Squadron. I don't know. But the answer is the feature development that they had planned to do, which was in the background sort of experimentally, they didn't do it at all. And sort of got it towards the end of the year, and we may see it next year. But again, January's planning session, so we may see them completely change things in planning. But
yes. Yeah. So I have a theory, and it does have to do with that. It's actually pretty close to what you said. Chris Roberts did a Chris Roberts and got ahead of himself, right? And started talking about something that somebody told him about, but maybe is still, it's like the whole, what I was screaming about during the live stream.
Yeah.
You guys should go watch that, by the way. It's on Astro Historian's channel, or which channel is it on?
AstroPub's. It's
AstroPub's channel, yeah. Go watch the live stream we watched over this last week of the 2016 holiday live stream. It was bad.
It's called Merry Cringemas.
God.
It is the worst thing CIG has produced. Period.
They took it off their YouTube channel.
It's one of the only, maybe one other thing, but I think it's one of the only things they've removed in terms of archiving completely. They've either privated it or they unlisted it because you can't access it. So people, of course, have re-uploaded it.
Yeah, and it's a fun watch. But it's kind of like what he was doing there, where he was talking about item 2.0 as if it was engineering. And he put out his letter from the chairman in December, right? Before the 4.0 preview came out, before they really saw how bad it might be. So I'm guessing, like you said, the optimism of them didn't think it would need too much work. Then it comes out, and their January planning meeting, they're like, hey, it's not going to happen like this. And so they just didn't tell us. They just, EPTU, huh? What? And yeah, we didn't get to see it used really at all until like late in the year. And that was, I think it was by July, maybe. Most of us were like, the EPTU is nowhere to be seen. Feature development's not happening. And there's some big features people are looking out for.
Yeah.
So do you think that they're turning back towards that now? Or do you think it's just kind of temporary for engineering to get out?
Oh, towards feature development?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. They're turning back to feature development.
So does that mean that they're turning away from playability, you think?
Yes and no. I have a theory. This is my theory on terms of what's going on next year. I'm going to call this. I've talked about this in my own stream and in social media, and I mean this in the most mean way possible. Not really. I'm saying something that's going to rage bait people, but I'm going to call the year of 2026 half-ass Citizen.
Okay.
Because I think they're going to focus heavily on features, but they're all going to be half-assed. They're going to be the bare minimum they need to get things functioning before they move on to the next feature.
So just like 3.x.
Just like 3.x. We're going back to that. But think about engineering. Engineering is the bare minimum you need to put in to call it engineering in the way that they want to go. It is basically just the same thing what we already had with extra steps, because it's still health pools with extra steps.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll eventually move health pools. Yeah, with fire. And then you can bring a ship back to life if it's dead and you're not dead yourself and you're not under attack. but it's not the gameplay loop that they wanted to do in the first place. And they might move towards that direction because they're still working on engineering, obviously, and they've got more things to do. But it's clear that they didn't have time to finish it and to get it fleshed out the way they wanted to. So they're just pushing it out there so they can get it out, so they can get in people's hands, break what they can, and then move on and then evolve it as they go along, if they have time.
Mm-hmm.
Because the next big feature, we already know, inventory screens has already been something they've showed multiple times and that they put on the progress tracker, updated the progress tracker for, and crafting. They showed multiple times, said that they're going to go into tech preview before the end of the year, which they didn't. But, it's still on the progress tracker. So, like, if we're getting inventory, we've got engineering, we're getting inventory, and we didn't just get engineering, we got engineering, Vulkan, new AI systems. If we're going to get inventory, crafting, probably going to get scanning, probably get Maelstrom, like all of the things that we need to. But I think they're trying to cram it all in so that it's all in before Squadron releases. So they can have a mostly feature done game that has no nuance to it, no balance.
Basically, they want an early access game available for Squadron 42's release. Yeah.
Exactly. That's my theory. And that's going to require them to cram a lot of features in very quickly. If we imply that, because they don't want to do a 1 month cadence anymore, so if we can imply they half that to being like 5 or 6 patches a year, that and Squadron possibly releasing in October, that means they have 10 months. So at most 5 patches to get all of the features they need for 1.0 and a basic format in. That is a breakneck pace for features. And if they can't do that, they need to get more. That's still like they're going to be dropping a feature, a patch. And in order to do that, you're not going to get details. So I call it half-assed Citizen as a way of saying it's going to feel half-assed, but it's kind of necessary for the game to progress.
So do you think that they are going to be able to maintain a good cycle of here's the feature in the EPTU, it's running, it's checking, it's getting confirmed, for a couple months like originally that was the plan, and then it gets passed into live and does a decent job, and then obviously the next EPTU is starting up. Do you think they can keep that going throughout the year?
Yeah, possibly. I think possibly. I don't know if it'll 100% happen. I think we'll have to know more in January. It's hard to, as you know, and I'm sure the audience knows, it's hard to predict anything with accuracy with CIG 3 months out. Usually you can get pretty close with like a month or two out, but like beyond 2 months, it's like you might as well read the tarot or go see a fortune teller, because they'll probably tell you more information about it than even CIG knows.
Yeah, there's not usually the most reliable. Learned that one over the years. Well, I'm looking forward to features coming back for sure. It feels exciting again, as much as it was nice to get a little boost in playability this year. It was just left so little to look forward to, I guess, kind of.
We've got a lot of features that we could look forward to. It's just one of those. I think we've got more to look forward to. I think it's just going to be a lot more muted than people hope.
Yeah. Yeah, but like compared to this year.
This year, there's no way. There were
a couple like sleeper features in there that didn't make too much of a difference, but I guess were like just nice additions going forward. Like the jump jets on the Golem, I feel like were a solid addition that they probably want to have for some other things in the game. They got rain in, the dynamic rain stuff. I think there were like a couple things. VR was a big surprise. Did you think that was going to happen this soon?
No, I did not see that happening. But it made sense in retrospect because like Sylvan has talked about it relentlessly for a long time, and Sylvan's the one who's basically doing all the engine updates. So he's probably like making an engine update, and before pushing it off, he's like, "I'm gonna test my engine, my
sneaking
VR
in a little bit,
yeah, test my VR code to see if it works. Okay, cool." And then building alongside. So
yeah, that's pretty solid. It's still experimental, but people are saying it looks pretty good. I don't have. Oh, you have a VR headset, yeah. How has it been?
It's been good. A lot better than I thought it was going to be, and I've got a very primitive one in comparison. This is an Oculus CV1. So it's like one of the first headsets that Oculus made.
Wow.
And it looks pretty good. It looks pretty standard when you play VR games, but the spatial awareness is pretty good. So
that's cool. Yeah, people always said that Elite Dangerous felt a lot better scaled when you put on the VR headset. And I was
oh yeah,
like,
you
man,
see
that's going to be so cool in Star Citizen.
the scale is amazing. So like to give you context, I was walking around a freelancer, and the landing gear of the freelancer was as tall as me. It was actually taller because it would go up to the engines. So
Jeez.
like
Oh, so the
it's
reclaimer of landing gear is going to be crazy to
yeah.
stand next to.
So like you just the scale of the ships is big. Like you don't
Mhm.
really know how big a Hornet is until you stand next to Hornet. And you're like, oh, this thing's huge. That's
Yeah.
why I like the Hornet that they did that was for CitizenCon that one year is still bigger than an F-16. You
Yeah.
know,
I mean, even some of
and it's not full scale.
yeah, even some of the smallest ships in the game are like 12 to 15 meters long, which is
Yeah,
still huge.
you can say that, but then when you actually like see that in person, you go, wow, that's huge. So
Yeah. Um. Oh man, what was I gonna? Oh, so I feel like I still have to look down at the keyboard when I'm playing. I mean, this might be because I'm not originally a PC gamer. I'm used to having a controller, but I
mhm.
feel like I will not be able to do it as well because I always have to look at the keyboard for one specific key, one weird key
Yeah,
that's out of place. And I don't want to throw a grenade when I'm trying to open my inventory. So
yeah,
for somebody who wants
it's
to play VR like me, do we have to wait until motion controls or something?
almost certainly. Yeah,
Yeah.
because like it's good for flying around or doing some stuff in first person when you're walking around. It's not really great for FPS combat right now. There's a lot of restrictions to it. But if Sylvan gets his way and he continues to improve it, then yeah, motion controls will be a better idea so that you can actually use the motion controllers to help you do things.
Yeah, he's talking
So
about full body tracking, right?
mhm.
What
If you're doing
what
full
what
body
does that mean?
tracking,
I'm
motion
freaking
controllers are
Ready Player
easy.
One. I'm putting a suit on and
Yeah, so let me show
feeling
you something. I have this
bullets hit me.
sitting right here. So this is a like a sensor, right?
Hmm.
Um, the most headsets come with like two or three. Sometimes they just come with one if they're really cheap. But I could in theory purchase up to like six or seven and put them all around the room. And then it would, if I had motion, there are things you can capture which have like little, basically motion tracking dots over your body. And the more
Hmm.
you have them, the better, the more articulated they can get, down to even like gloves. Um, and you can do full motion VR experience with it.
Wow.
Um, Now you're talking like $3,000, $4,000 to do it,
What I
and
okay, it's either that or what, 128 gigabytes of RAM?
yeah,
I'll take it.
it's going to be the price, and that's the price now. It'll probably be more like 10 grand for something like that in 2026. But the full motion stuff, if it gets working, will still be fun and be immersive, but it won't ever be meta. So it's one of those sort of
Yeah.
balance
Oh yeah,
things.
of course. I mean, none of the VR or even eye tracking stuff will ever be meta, right?
Yeah.
This is niche hardware. But that's why I think it's even more impressive that it comes out. And I know people are probably thinking, why are they doing this so early? But I think that this kind of pressure helps the game develop in a better direction than it would if they had tried to put this on top of it, right?
Mhm. I think so for sure. They're building it while they're building the everything else, so that's going to help a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think Sylvan's in a unique position where he's such high up in the company that he has access to things that your average employee wouldn't, and so he also knows information that your average employee might not know. So he probably knows the path they're developing for certain things, so he can go, "Oh, I got to get this ready for this because when this comes out, it's got to be connected to that."
Yeah.
So
Yep. I think that helps. Let's talk about the new storylines in Star Citizen. Um, yeah. How you feeling about that?
I love him. I love him.
Do you
They,
think that they've gotten better throughout the year?
oh yeah, they've gotten so much better. I think the last mission, the last FOMO stuff they did with the Fall of the Frontier Fighters was mediocre. It wasn't bad, but it was mediocre.
Kind of just like, here, you guys, just go ahead and take care.
They had
keep yourselves busy.
They had to conclude that storyline. But the problem is that they bungled the storyline in 324 and 40 with the Fight for Pyro, Save Stanton, Fight for Pyro.
Oh, right, and, yeah.
Like they bungled that so hard that there really was no buy-in from players. In fact, if not, it was mocking, myself included, absolutely mocking them for how bad they were at it. Listen, I'm not above. In fact, I actively encourage bullying CIG when they mess up because that's the only way they learn. Because it's a company, you can bully companies. It's entirely ethical and legal. To show how bad it was, because it worked in this case because they clearly said what was wrong, and they figured out what was going wrong was that the mission team was handed mayonnaise and some beans and told to make steak. And they're like, we'll do our best with what we have. And then when it turned out to be kind of a mess and no one really liked it, they went, well, why did they like it? And CIG understood, because we gave you mayonnaise and beans instead of steak. So they started giving that team steak and they started producing steak. Sometimes overdone, sometimes underdone, but sometimes perfect. It's just like now that they got the tools in that they needed to for the mission systems.
Can I just say real quick that you're going on a list somewhere that I'm not getting rid of for introducing the concept of mayonnaise and beans into my brain?
I'm sure it's probably a British delicacy. Let's be honest. That's the most British thing I've ever said in my life. And I'm not taking it back. And if you're watching this from the UK, you know that's true.
It's beans with something.
It's beans with something, and beans with mayonnaise sounds super, super white. And so it sounds like the whitest thing from Essex, you know? I don't know. I've just probably insulted a bunch of people who I have.
Oh, no, it's fine. They're watching. They know. It's okay. I'm sure it's delicious. I eat things that you probably don't like, but that doesn't sound too good. But yeah, the mayonnaise and beans turned into something that was pretty, or rather, they got rid of it and gave us something that was a bit better. How do you feel about the way they're delivering it? I don't know how MMO stories usually play out, but they've talked about how they want different locations to have these storylines, and clearly they're filling them out for like each different star system. But is this typically how an MMO does it, where you can just kind of stumble upon it, or you can take a contract, or they usually gated?
It depends. Sometimes the thing is that most MMOs, not all, but most, let you explore the entire map from day one. Sometimes those MMOs have higher levels in those areas, which means that you'll die if you go into those areas if you're super low level. But effectively, what you can think of a typical MMO experience is very similar to that of an RPG, an open world RPG, where you can go pretty much anywhere and do anything, but there are storylines that you can follow, which will take you down a specific path to answer, to tell a story from a specific person.
Yeah.
So each faction is going to have its own storyline in Star Citizen. That makes sense. There were plenty of factions and sub-factions of every region in WoW. I'm trying to think of the other MMOs I've played, but yeah, like that was the similar thing to like Star Wars Galaxies.
Yeah, I was going to ask about Galaxies. I feel like they're taking a lot of inspiration from that.
Which makes sense. I mean, the number of people who are nostalgic for it in this community are pretty high, myself included. And I didn't play it nearly as much as some folks did. In that community, it was closest you're going to get to a sandbox MMO as you can think of, because it still had some theme park elements, which is very similar to what Star Citizen's going to be. And for those of you who don't know what the hell I'm talking about when I say sandbox versus theme park,
why is there a sandbox in the game?
A theme park is like when you go to Disneyland and you can ride the rides and interact with the mascots, but you're not really choosing two things. You're going through a pre-created story that you're experiencing. So like WoW, you don't have an effect on the world, you're part of the world. Whereas with Sandbox, you actively affect the world, building bases, mining things, fighting with other people. EVE has got a lot of sandbox elements, which people really draw to, but it has its own theme park elements that people forget about. They're just not the highlight of the of the game. And Elite's similar, very similar to that idea. So Star Citizen is sort of trying to bridge the gap between the two, but it was sort of an open world theme park where you had some influence in terms of sandbox gameplay, and then the design to do like bases and crafting that's going to expand it more into that sandbox open world gameplay.
Yeah.
And as a result, I even forgot what we're talking about.
The storyline.
MMOs, storyline for MMOs.
Yeah.
Yes. It's very, these are very similar to that. Yes. And the fact that there are some repeatables, it's very similar. It's kind of to a detriment, but because I think CIG is super focused on their storytelling from Squadron. So they're still used to telling stories in a single player perspective where you're the main character.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with MMOs is they often just do single player storylines, but in an MMO. So like you walk up to this guy and it's like, "Hello, I am old man Wizen Christoph Jorgensen. I have a problem that only you can solve, young adventurer." And he gives you the match, and you come back and you hand it in. It's like, "Thank you for saving my daughter." And you take 2 steps away, and another guy walks up and says, "Hello, I'm old man Jorgensen. I've got a problem that only you can find. I need you to find my daughter." And it's like, I just literally returned her.
He has a lot of daughters.
Yeah.
Big family.
But it's that sort of, you're the chosen one among a million chosen ones, which sort of falls flat in terms of a storyline. And that's the typical MMO storyline experience.
Which is definitely not Star Citizen.
I mean, CIG's flirting with it. That's the problem. Is that
at least the idea of what, the idea of Star Citizen. Literally in the name. What they're originally,
well, that was the thing that Chris said from the very early days was like, I don't like those things. I don't like the fact that you can go kill the Lich King and then like you made no effect, and everyone else can go kill the Lich King the same way. Now I think they're trying to figure out a way so that they don't have to create brand new assets for every time they have a boss, and then have it only exist once. But at the same time, they're also wanting to make sure that everyone has a similar experience, which is where you get things like Onyx and Site B, where like, you're investigating it, and it sort of borders on that because your Arkham's missions are like, you are the person going to explore this for the first time rather than like everyone doing it. Which is why I think they're supposed to be instanced, so it feels more unique. You're not just running into people. But at the same time, it makes sense later on because it's like, of course, this facility would still be there because, it's being guarded
it works. It works as a location if you ignore the story.
Yeah. It's just the story is flirting with the "you are the chosen one" narrative. So,
so can they and this was like kind of why people were so excited for the quantum simulation, for the idea of virtual AI, for how they wanted AI to kind of be permanently dead, like you're saying. Is that even possible? I mean, obviously they were trying to sell people on the idea, but now are they going back on that? Do you think that still is a possibility? Even this year with Amelia Boyd as a character that's nameable, everybody was still killing the same Amelia Boyd or getting freaking calls from Amelia Boyd when I killed some henchman. Why was she calling me on my personal number? Because I killed some nameless henchman in some spaceship and that was ridiculous. But
master hacker, that's what she is.
Yeah, I guess so. And very sympathetic to her workers. But do you think they can still reach that sort of unique feel?
Yeah, they can. I mean, they literally just talked about how the economy that they're building right now, because they talked about the updates with the bracket system. The bracket system, which is a good one. Have you read that post?
Yeah, I like that.
That post is sort of, you can kind of imply that with NPCs as well. Like there'll be, high, low value NPCs and interacting with them, and you'll have limited numbers of NPCs who are super unique and that kind of thing. And CIG has an out. They have a massive out because they built it into their lore, which is one of the reasons why they built it into the lore, which is regen.
Right.
Regen is accessible by everybody, even though, the regen crisis happened and we were not affected, and other people were, but it doesn't mean that other people aren't also not affected by it. So you can have Amelia Boyd die 6,000 times, and it makes sense because she keeps regenning. You know,
of course.
And so then you can decide that she's dead, but that's their out is like, you killed this lieutenant, and that lieutenant may have the same name as the lieutenant that you killed like 2 days ago, because it's the same lieutenant you killed 2 days ago.
He just came back. But see, that's where they need to get in the whole memory from the Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War games. If they could pull that off, dude, I know I know.
It's
okay.
legally a problem because
but listen, there's got to be some other way to allow NPCs to recall that you killed them, dude. If they could do that, that would make it make so much sense. Could you imagine running into a pirate and him being like, "You got me last time, but not again"? Oh, that would be great. That'd be great, and it makes sense.
That would work. I think it would work for especially when you do that sort of repeat games, and it makes sense. It makes sense in that storyline. So like, I think they could do that with NPCs, because they could name NPCs, and then those NPCs could have a certain number of lives, and after a certain point, they're dead. So and you can just give them unique names and have the same voice actor, and it's sort of just like, okay, well, this NPC is Lieutenant, Jim, and Lieutenant Jim works for the headhunters, and you're against the headhunters, and you keep running to Lieutenant Jim, and Lieutenant Jim is like, we got to stop meeting like this. You got to stop killing me, and you keep killing him, and he keeps coming back.
Keep meeting like this.
But Lieutenant Jim flies his Gladius every single time, and then finally Lieutenant Jim just doesn't spawn anymore.
Oop.
But now Lieutenant Bob spawns, and he's in his Hornet.
Hey.
He may have the same voice as Lieutenant Jim, but he's a different character because he's got a different name and a different ship, and that's
he's his own man.
Yeah, you can get away with that with some sleight of hands. Skyrim and the Elder Scrolls games famously did that, where like they have like 7 voice actors and they voice all of them, and sometimes they just don't bother changing their voice, and it's like, you're this guy and this guy. Are you both the same person?
Sure, small world.
Yeah.
Right. Do you think that they're going to keep doing this? We were talking about the move to more of the feature focus. Do you think that they're going to continue with the stories at the same pace, or you think they might take a step back as they turn more towards feature?
I think they'll take a step back a little bit, but I think they have a better understanding now of how to tell those stories than they did at the beginning of 2025. So like, they understand what works and what doesn't, because Onyx quite literally is the best thing they've ever done. Onyx is so amazing in terms of storytelling and in terms of character building, in terms of like the atmosphere. Like, you got to know who Dr. Yoret was. You got to know the locations, the history behind everything, if you wanted to. Not necessarily you had to, but you got to know them. And I think that was one of the problems with Amelia Boyd, sort of intentionally is the problem, was that she kept calling you after you killed her lieutenants, and she's like, I hope you fucking burn. And it's like, I don't know you, woman. I think the problem is you never got to know her.
Yeah.
But you did get to hate her because she kept calling you and guilt tripping you about things.
And there was just no care. Like you said, the first iteration of that completely killed any interest. And it's funny because they opened up the year saying it was their A story and that the B story was going to be regen, and clearly that changed.
Yeah, B story became the best because they used the B story to hop on for the A story for 2026, like the end of this year, sort of introducing the Vanduul and Nyx and that kind of thing. It's like, it's clear that the A story next year is going to be Nyx, the Vanduul and Nyx, and the B story is going to be Nyx 1. So
yeah. So do you think any of this has to do with the main storyline that they would be setting up, or is all of this just location based kind of side quest stuff?
Probably a little bit of both. It's probably just experimentation.
Yeah.
Because any of the stories they tell where like, yeah, Amelia Boyd is dead and she won't come back, it's like, yeah, cool. Frontier fighters are gone. We won't see the Frontier fighters again. That's fine. Because then you can mention the Frontier fighters, or CIG can slip in a defunct Frontier fighters base somewhere in 1.0, and people can be like, hey, I remember these bastards, And then the new guy who comes in is like, what are you talking about? It's like, oh yeah, we fought these people. We killed them all. The players did. That's literally what we did in 4.1, in the 4.0 cycle. Yeah. We murdered them all.
It's in the lore.
It's in the lore, but it's not just a lore, but it's also a player experience. And that sort of builds that's sort of the story experience I think CIG is trying to go for, where some parts you can always play back and forth. There are sandbox activities, some story progression where you can get to know various mission givers and help specific factions out. but then there's also going to be these one-time events that happen that you kind of go through and participate in, and then it affects the outcome of the verse in some small way. So
they're still chasing that Jumptown high.
Yes,
of the old Jumptown wars.
Their mistake that became the blueprint for how you should tell stories.
And
so.
it's crazy that they haven't been able to replicate it out just kind of in the sandbox with these different locations.
I have faith that they will eventually. It's just a matter of learning to blend that with storytelling. So
yeah, they'll get there. Let's pivot a little bit to a pretty big moment. Well, I won't say a big moment, but kind of a theme that occurred throughout 2025, in my opinion. You could disagree with this if you'd like. But it feels to me like they got a lot more realistic about their communication. They still made plenty of mistakes, but from like the no more concept ship sales to like canceling a free fly event, all the way back to Jared at Con 42 kind of having a moment where he explained that a lot of the things from the past of this game's development were said by people who might not be able to make those things still happen, and therefore we should sort of consider that things might change. You know, it was a soft way of saying, hey, we don't know if we can do everything that we've said over the past 13 years. How do you feel about that? Do you think it's good that they're sending that message now? Do you think they should still try to pursue those things? Are they changing a lot? Should players who are more invested be worried that they're changing the game a lot?
Yes, to some of it. I've been worried, and I think we've talked about it on this podcast before, where I've been worried that we're entering a time period. We've been in a time period in the last 2 years where a lot of folks are going to see changes to the game and go, wait, this might not be the game that I wanted when I backed Star Citizen in 2014, 2015, 2016. And they'll step away. And I still think we're in that phase, especially as we go into more features where some things are going to be there. Like I think most of the basic features that CIG has talked about in the past and more recently, the stuff that's going to be in 1.0 is going to be there. But like there's plenty of things like the virtual AI system. We haven't heard anything about that in
Good Lord.
years. Like that might as well be gone, you know? But does that mean that the virtual AI system will never exist? No, CIG might come back and look at it when they have time and resources. I think the way to interpret how Jared and the teams are talking is we need to be realistic about 1.0. And when we reach 1.0, we can then go back and look at and see if these things make sense with the game we've made rather than the game we talked about in 2013.
So you think they're depending on a pretty heavy development cycle post 1.0?
Yes, almost certainly. Because then one of the things that they've been consistently saying is just because we release 1.0 doesn't mean we're not continuing to work on the game. 1.0 feels like them trying to create a deadline because art is not made when you have unlimited time. Art is made when you have restrictions. And CIG had forgotten that fact. It's something that the community had tried to remind them forever. There's an old saying, pressure makes diamonds. You know, like you need to have restrictions in order to actually start completing things. Because
so
you have unlimited time and resources.
To put this clearly for the kids these days, do not let them cook?
Don't let them cook. No. Take the freaking pan away from them and see what they can make.
How could you?
Listen, like sometimes you don't have a pan. Sometimes you only got a pot. You got a pot and you got to make pork chops. You just do your best with what you got. And who knows? Maybe pot fried pork chops are some of the best things that you've ever created.
Pot's just tall pan, right?
Exactly. They lets you add more things you didn't think about before, and that's sort of what they're striking at, which is we need to get 1.0 because 1.0 is a deadline. It is a thing. We need to have a project, and that's what Rich feels like. Rich came in to really do because it's the same thing he did with Squadron. You know, this is the vision. This is what we're going to do. We're done. But anyone who's played an MMO knows that MMOs never stop developing. WoW is still introducing new content and changing old content, and it was released like 20 years ago.
But how about features? I get
New features
content.
happen all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
New features happen all the time. Overhauls of features happen all the time. A great example of this in a single player format is Cyberpunk 2077. When Cyberpunk 2077 came out, it was very different from when Phantom Liberty came out.
Yeah.
Phantom Liberty overhauled the whole gameplay experience in general. Same thing with like No Man's Sky did that similarly, where like they overhauled the experience as they evolved. It's going to be the same. I think you're going to see features very different in 1.5 or 2.0, whatever CIG calls the year after 1.0, compared to 1.0.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and as a result, because they have so focused on 1.0, they have to start being realistic about things that they can and can't do, which is, again, one of those things I'm like, when they start being realistic, people are going to go, but I backed for this specific thing. And it's like, well, that specific thing is no longer a priority and may not come out for a decade. So people have to make the hard decision if they still want to follow Star Citizen.
They're definitely changing things, and it's interesting to try and think about where those changes are coming from. I think they're different places, but for instance, respawns are something that has kind of changed in terms of an idea recently.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't think there was going to be like a fully featured respawn screen where you could choose where you would spawn. I used to talk about that being a possibility, but people would be like, this is gonna, that would make the idea of the continuity be a little bit weird. I'm guessing they'll figure something out for lore there. But then also, what else did they? Oh, there's a player skill system. They don't talk about it much. They do not bring that up much, but it could tread very, very carefully into a territory that a lot of the original backers to this game are vehemently against.
Mm-hmm. Well, we already knew that was going to change. How to put it this way? The second they started talking about upgrades and like crafting, we knew that skills are like crafting is just a tier 2 armor chest piece, which is better than a tier 1 armor chest piece, is going to win in a firefight. So there is always going to be some progression when it comes to equipment. And if there's progression when it comes to equipment, what's the difference between equipment and skills? They're the same things, only one's applied only to a piece of equipment, and the other one's applied to yourself.
Yeah, I can steal your equipment from you.
Yeah.
If I like what you got, I can come over and take it. Yeah.
But skills are not that much different because you also can do things like eat food. Like they've talked about the idea of having a well-rested bonus, for instance, for sleeping and stuff. So like we've known for a while now that there's going to be a soft skill system of any kind, which will affect performance. And as a result, it wasn't ever going to be pure skill. I'm saying that to rage bait people in chat and there are people in the comments.
Rage baiting me a little bit, dude. I might shut this show down. I mean, I know it's not going to be pure skill, but it is a weird choice. It definitely feels like the kind of thing that they built for Squadron, and then they're just like, why don't we put it in Star Citizen?
And if it doesn't work, then pull it out. If they don't think it works before for 1.0, because they've done that before with like hover mode and stuff like that. I think the main point is they're trying to find a way for players to be invested in their character in a universe where Death of a Spaceman exists. Because at the end of the day, if you don't care about your character and there are nothing to attach you to the character, you don't care if you have to regen 1,700 times. The only thing that it will hurt is your reputation and your money. That's just an inconvenience rather than being a like something that actually makes you want to hold on to your character.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about, a lot of this stuff is focusing on, again, what does 1.0 look like? And I think that's another thing that they're trying to experiment with. So
this shift that the game has been going through in 2025 feels like a direct representation of the shift the company has also been going through. Mm-hmm. You mentioned a couple names in terms of staff. We've seen people come and go. How do you feel like now that we've had both 24 and 25, which I think were two pretty significant times for the company itself in terms of how their staff's changing, where do you think this change comes from? You don't have to name specific names if you don't want to, but like, how do you think this is all manifested?
Well, two things. One, Richard Tyrer, I would say his last name properly, but Chris clearly sees Richard Tyrer as him, as a protege for the future of CIG, like a young, what Chris Roberts was like when he was younger. He sees himself in Richard Tyrer in terms of his passion, his ideas, all those sorts of things. And it's clear based off of the people I've talked to at CIG that Rich's change, his focus, is really what's causing people to go, oh, we have a plan. We know where we're going, rather than the vague idea in the future. This is 1.0 and this is when it's coming out. We need to hit that date. Even if they miss that date, they have a date and they have a full on, this connects to this, this connects to this, this connects to this. We have an idea. And the big thing about Rich is that Rich also plays a lot of MMOs. So he understands what an MMO is in comparison to Chris Roberts, who didn't play a lot of MMOs. And there's really, as far as I can tell, not a lot of people who actually made or played MMOs on staff at CIG. They had a lot of Blizzard folks, but like Tyler Witkin was not coding WoW. He was testing WoW and working on WoW, but he wasn't coding it, wasn't designing it. And people at Blizzard, a lot of the folks who worked at Blizzard that I know who work at CIG they work in, player relations. They work in the platform. They're not working in like FPS team or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I don't know a lot of folks who worked on other MMO specific projects. So having someone like Rich who actually understands how MMOs are played in terms of the experience that people have, while also understanding the full idea of what Chris had and trying to mesh those together, I think that's really the change that happened. Once we started hearing about 1.0 at the end of last year, well, not really the end of last year, at the end of 2024. I think it was 2024 when they talked about 1.0, right? Or am I thinking?
Yeah. No, that was CitizenCon.
And then 2020, or was it 2023?
No, it was 24.
It was 24? Okay.
Yeah.
So at the end of 2024, when we have that full breadth of what 1.0 is, that was really the roadmap that they've been following since then, the sort of the path they wanted to follow. I think that changed. That was the change that has changed CIG to the way they are now. Because, like I said, 3.0 CIG would make Ghost Hollow. Why? Because they want to make Ghost Hollow.
Yep. They want something for right there.
For that patch.
Yeah.
And then Ghost Hollow becomes pointless 2 patches later. Whereas Hathor is still valuable even today, because it was designed with the idea of this is what we're going to have at the end of the gameplay loop from here to here. So we can now use this location for all of these other options we have.
It was built for a game instead of a tech demo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why they say Siege of Orison is coming back, because Siege of Orison was built with the understanding it was built by
Elliot
and his team, and it was his baby. So he's gonna find a way of crowbarring that thing back into the game somehow, some way, shape, or form. It's the most Metal Gear Solid mission in Star Citizen, and I love it. So, cheers off to you there. But it's I think that's a great example of like they will find what works and what doesn't, and they'll incorporate it into there. And so as a result, like everything we see in Star Citizen going forward is built for the 1.0 experience. And that can cause frustration because sometimes it's built for the 1.0 experience and you're like, well, we're missing 5 different features that would make this fun,
It's also why some things aren't being built, because they don't have the features to make them fun. Like I would not be interested in them making data running missions right now, because we don't have data to run. They don't know how it's going to work. It would be in 3 years they would be useless. It'd be just like the racing missions.
They could make data running missions tomorrow, but it would just be like box missions with extra steps.
Yeah.
There's no real point to it.
They've gotten more mature in the endeavors they're trying to take on.
And I think it's because they have focus. That's to round out that answer. I think it's because it's focus, and that focus is due to a lot of different people. But I think Richard Tyrer is the main director behind that. His vision connected with Chris is the sort of like he's the seer. He takes the ramblings of Chris and goes, I'm going to use this. Okay, we're going to figure this out. This is what Chris actually wants, and then makes it into an idea and says, Chris, this is what you want. And Chris goes, sure, that's great. And then
he's the Chris
passed
whisperer.
on to the rest of the team. Yeah, the Chris whisperer.
Yeah, which I mean is kind of, you know, one of the things that people always like to point out is that Chris, with his older games, would have all the ideas, would get them into place, but wouldn't be able to finish out the project, and somebody else would take it over and finish it up. I'm not saying that's exactly what's happening here, but it probably does help for, especially to start a company and have it grow to be that big. At some point, there's got to be somebody else that steps in to run it once it reaches a certain size, right? Once you need somebody to be the person who puts pencil to paper,
yeah,
rubber to the road, whatever the saying is.
And it's a collaborative event. It's a collaborative thing. So everyone at CIG is making the game. Like I and this is going to get another controversial point, but like the narrative writers are making the game. The QA people are making the game, because without their input, without their design, without their help or what they're doing, you wouldn't have a game. So like it's as a result, Richard Tyre could have all these great ideas and Chris could have all these great ideas, but without those team members having the guidance and the desire to do it, it wouldn't happen. So people like Elliot and his team are as important as the economy team or the John Crew and the EU ship team, or you know, all of these teams have to work in tandem to make everything work. And Tyre's job is to make sure that they all know what the hell they're supposed to do, so they can talk to each other.
Soldiers win wars.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that Rich plays MMOs compared to Chris, who maybe not as much, and that could help them build a more traditional MMO. But like you said, a lot of people might not like that, and they've sort of laid this out to not be like a traditional MMO. Is that the disconnect between Rich and Chris that you're talking about in understanding an MMO? Is it still possible to pursue what they were trying to do, or do things just need to change?
Things need to change. Quite frankly, like I am not a huge MMO player, but I've played enough MMOs to generally know what happens. I'm much more of a survival and FPS player. I love strategy games, but I'm bad at them. Like people's like, oh, you love like these different games. Why don't you play them on streams? Because you won't watch me. I'm awful at these games. I love Civilization. Terrible. I've never beaten a game beyond Prince level. Like I've been playing Civilization since Civilization 2. I just don't care to get good at it. I just enjoy them.
It gets to be a drag towards the end.
Yeah. Watching people fail is funny though. Yeah, but it's not. Me failing isn't entertaining because I won't fail in epic ways. I'll fail in stupid ways.
It'll just putter out.
Yeah. But from the perspective of somebody who understands MMOs, understands the other things, I understand what Chris was trying to go for. He was like, I don't like all these things that are active in MMOs. Like, for instance, going to fight the Lich King is a big epic moment, but it sort of gets undercut because everyone gets to fight the Lich King. So Chris is like, let's not have the Lich King. Let's have the Dread Pirate Roberts, who only you can kill, and now it becomes a big deal because you killed the Dread Pirate Roberts. On paper, great idea. In practice, that's a lot of work for a single character that you're going to kill from one player's experience, and then is never going to get reused again. That is impractical unless you're having an infinite money printing machine.
But it's not like that became more impractical since he wrote that down and sold it to people.
Well, yeah, no, that's the thing, is that Chris has a vision of a cool idea, and people like that cool idea. But when you actually take that cool idea and start implementing it into the game you're designing and building, that cool idea might suck. Kind of like food. Food, eating and drinking was never supposed to kill you. It was only supposed to be a debuff. But it's clear they were just like, let's just let them die. Because like the difference between eating and drinking and getting a debuff and dying is you're dying with extra steps, because eventually if you run out of food and water and you can't see anything and you're just blurry and it's just like you can barely walk or run, it's like you might as well just get killed, because there's no reason to play the game. Like it's not going to create any more drama with you trying to
lay in bed.
Food.
Jesus, don't have to kill me off. Rude.
You're just useless, the tomato. This is for your own good.
Yeah, I'm a tomato. What can I say?
Just but I think that the idea was that there was not so much of a disconnect between dying from it versus effectively dying from it.
Yeah.
So why not just make them die from it, and makes it simpler, and makes it so there's a cleaner loop, because when you die you can regen and it's much easier. So like those sorts of things change, but a lot of the fan base doesn't understand it, because they're like, oh well, I'm just going to die because I didn't eat a torpedo burrito in the middle of my combat. And it's like, well, it's not the point. It was never the point. And that's an example of how things will change because of the way that the gameplay is being developed, and that will continue to happen. And as that happens, it's just the nature of the beast when things happen. You and I are both Halo players, and I always like to point out that Halo, when it was originally designed, was a strategy game. And then it evolved into a third-person shooter for the Mac, and eventually became the first-person shooter for the Xbox that we see today.
Thank God.
But it took them like 5 or 6 years, and they changed it multiple times. So,
boy,
like, but that's the thing. Like, that created Halo, one of the most influential game IPs in history. I always like to talk about how Titanfall, the original concept of Titanfall was you're in a robot on top of a big ship flying through like on a planet fighting dragons. Like, does that sound cool? Yeah, but it doesn't sound like Titanfall.
Yeah, I like Titanfall more.
And there's lots of stuff like that has happened. So the thing about a game that you want to make versus a game that you can actually make is often, is it fun, and is it practical, and can we do it with the technology we have? And Chris Roberts was always like, I'm going to do it because we have the technology now. But so that's not really the issue as much as time and resources and practicality. And so that's one of the reasons why you kind of have to change it. Like it, and players were always going to have to accept this at some point. I mean, I remember back in 2013, people talking about like, yeah, eventually we'll probably have some compromise, but if Chris Roberts and CIG can do even a third of what they promise, then it'll be one of the best games that's ever been made.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been the thing people say, like if they can do half of this and stuff like that. But there are certain points, you know, if you joined after 2020, obviously your expectations are different than if you joined after 2018 or 2015. So what do you say to the people who joined in 2013 who obviously took the risk of backing a Kickstarter, which we've seen can always go different ways, run by a person who has also had some struggling projects in the past, and keeping in mind that it's not those other games that you talked about are, you're answering to investors, right? As a smaller group of investors who are giving you money to make the game, and you can tell them, hey, we're going to have to change things probably, and they can be on board for that. When you're talking about tens, 20s, hundreds of millions of people, it's different when you change things for them. So what do you say to the people who are way back in the day joined for the vision?
I can't say anything that'll change their mind. Either they're already still on board from back then or they're not. Like, there's plenty of people who jumped out in 2015. I remember there's a large group of people who became very no longer bought in on the game. That was when the anti-Star Citizen fever really started. And a lot of the folks we can see in the community right now that really like to stir up drama or talk shit about Star Citizen were fans back then, and then decided to jump ship because they just didn't like the way it was going. So either you hate it, you like it, or you're waiting for it to come out. That's pretty much the status. There's nothing really I can say other than you can see with your own eyes that projects change, and that was one of those things that was hammered into us even when we were backing in 2013, which was, yeah, things change. Things will change. We'll try to do this, that, or the other thing.
Oh.
So
I'd like to add one more option to your list there and say all of the above. Like it, hate it, and waiting for it to release.
And wait for it to return. Yes, that is also entirely possible.
What would you say is the most important thing, or are the most important things that they got to do this year?
I think other than server meshing, which technically was last year, but I think the most important thing they could get done was Vulkan. 4.5's Vulkan is probably the most important thing.
Yeah, I think 4.5. So this is the first actual engine update of the year, right?
Yeah.
And I think that has kind of made their playability push more valid, because I haven't, obviously it's first couple days of the patch, things could degrade over time, but I was just going through the Onyx facilities today and I was locked in. Outside of a couple moments, I was locked in at 60 frames per second on my computer, and the server was at 30. And that's unbelievable to me last year. My computer's not the best out there, but it's pretty good. And so I should be pushing frames better than that on a normal game. But for Star Citizen, I would say that's a pretty hefty increase over even just earlier this quarter. Well, how would you say they've done?
I think it's done significant. Like people have been, but you can now tweak settings enough for your own rig to make it run much better. Like I did upgrade my rig this year because I was in anticipation of Squadron, and I was like, oh yeah, I saw tariffs coming down the pipe, and I was like I am going to jump on this before everything becomes more expensive, and I'm glad I did, considering my entire rig can buy me 2 sticks of DDR5, 64 gigabytes of RAM. So as a result, I have much better performance than I did in the past. But it was also, there was just better performance because of server meshing coming in. And I think that performance is important because one of the biggest flaws that Star Citizen had in the eyes of the average person was this game is buggy, barely functions, and you can't run it on your machine because it doesn't work well. That's sort of started to change last year, and like this year it's almost completely removed. It's now still buggy, but it's not like people go, oh yeah, I get 2 FPS. It's like, no, you get 30 FPS, and sometimes you can struggle in some places, but it runs better on my machine than some games that are fully released. I have more crashes on games that have been out for the last 2 years than I have on Star Citizen recently, which is impressive considering what Star Citizen's been in the past. But yeah, I think that's just it.
Something I've really liked that I've noticed is in 4.5, the little hitches that come every once in a while seem to be gone. Again, so far. But I think that was something they pointed out was could have been changing with this, was that 1% lowest frames that you get being gone, and it's noticeable. It's like every once in a while, I think a lot of the times I had that problem, it was my CPU chugging. And I don't know if this has affected my CPU or not. I know this is mostly GPU related updates with 4.5, but it definitely, I'm not getting those random drops or periodic drops anymore every like 20, 30 seconds.
Yeah. And I do like the fact that they have the bar telling you how much VRAM is being used. So.
Yeah, that is good. Yeah, so I also would say Vulkan was a pretty good change. Server meshing, gotta remember we went from 100 players per shard a year ago to 700 now. Yeah, do you think they're gonna raise that again anytime soon, or are they still just trying to fortify the tech?
I think they'll do it eventually. It's just a matter of I think it's a matter of instancing, because I think that's their big focus right now, is trying to get instancing in, and once they have instancing, that's dynamic meshing. So it's not that far away from actual dynamic meshing, and I don't think there's really a rush to increase the number of players, because there's the goal is to eventually have like a single shard of North America, a single shard of Australia, Asia, and EU. But that's like 1 point or beyond 1.0.
Yeah.
So
Do so that's like we've been talking about the vision changing. That's I think a big part of it that people at least have different expectations. You still think they're trying to go for even one shard per region?
last I heard, yes, but I also think that it'll depend on the scale that they can build the game in. Because they seem to be very confident about it, but it's a matter of, like a lot of things, just it's not a matter if they can do it. It's a matter of, is it worth the resources to do it? Do they want to put the investment resources for it? And I think the answer generally is yes, because the fewer shards they have, the fewer number of servers they have to support, which means the less cost it will have for them to run the game. I think that's really the push for a single shard. It's like, oh, well, this is cool if we're all in the single game, which was going to be impossible anyways. But having every region in a single location, you can swap between those regions. Sounds like a cool idea gameplay wise, but for me, it's financial reason, because it's just cheaper than having to run 1,400 servers for a certain number of people. So
I think the question comes down to how good can the AI perform in the game, because everybody just wants to feel like you're living in a populated world. If it's players or AI, as long as the AI is performing well enough, I think most players don't mind.
And I think honestly, the AI is the real thing, because like we've missed CIG populating the world with AI for a while, and I think that's really the big, the next big step is not necessarily an increase in player count; it's the increase of AI, having AI flying around stations and like intercepting them and that kind of stuff. So
they will literally never get anywhere if we don't get proper security. Like every single AI ship is going to get shot down if they just start putting like cargo haulers going between stations and stuff.
Yeah, and I think this last update was a huge one for that sort of situation, because they really need to have the new Vulkan integration to help out, and the new AI updates to improve AI performance, and behaviors. So
yeah, and security is an interesting topic, because it's actually a place where they sort of boasted was moving forward this year, from AI security pilots around space stations to security turrets later in the year spawning in for FPS encounters. But I don't really notice. I know for a fact those FPS turrets got taken out. I'm not sure if they're still supposedly in the game, according to their patch notes.
I'm sure they're technically working, but they haven't put them in, really. They haven't really worked with them.
They were in Onyx at first, and then I just never saw them after the PTU tests. But also the ships around stations haven't come in. And there are some different scenarios where they may have missed a feature or said something that didn't really pan out. Are there any areas that you feel like they have gotten worse this year over previous years? We've talked a lot about how they've grown and gotten better.
I mean, other than feature development, because like at least in the previous years, we've had effectively features pretty frequently released per year, like usually like 2 or 3 features. So yeah, I think it's features.
Feature development. Yeah, that's an easy one. All right. How do you think the community did this year?
There are some very legitimate crash outs the community had, and there's a lot of noise the community made. The most legitimate crash out was the AI blades, or not the AI blades, but the blades system, the selling of that blade system. I think that was one of those things where it required the entire community, content creators, community members, everyone to make fun of CIG so hard that they actually sat back and went, "Oh, we understand what's going on." And I think they've sort of learned the lesson, but I also think they learned the wrong lesson, which was, oh, don't do AI blades. It's like no one cared about the AI blades. They were fine. It was the fact that they were selling the AI blades rather than just putting in the game that was the issue. And they're trying to do a workaround of like, well, you can get X, Y, or Z in the game because you can earn it in game through Wicklow. And God, I hate Wicklow. Everyone hates Wicklow. I take it back in terms of what they screwed up on. I think Wicklow is the biggest screw up. Wicklow was the most promising feature coming into the year, and he became the worst feature of the game.
Is he the worst feature because of the supporting features around him, or do you feel like just fundamentally he is broken?
I feel like he's fundamentally broken in the current version of the game. Like his purpose is to test out a feature. So he's got the 3 point a little blurry there. The 3 point something problem. Where like his job was to give you physical rewards. And so he's just become the dumping ground for all new things.
Yeah.
Which make no sense. Like, oh, you want to get we don't want to have to sell the golem in game, so we'll just give it to Wicklow. So you can go earn something something through Wicklow. And it's like, you mean I have to go fight the giant sandworm to get a starter miner?
Oh, dude. Fight it with a mining laser.
Did you actually freaking listen to what I just said? See, did you listen to what you just did? Did you sound it out loud and say this makes logical sense? That's the problem, is that Wicklow's become used as a dumping ground. He's a dumping ground as an excuse for CIG to technically add something into the game, but they don't want to add it into the game so people can purchase it because for whatever reason. So yeah, I don't like Wicklow. I like him as a concept, as an idea, and as a mission giver. He's great. He needs more fleshing out, but he's great. But when his actual implementation is dog, but it's just not good.
I think it would have been better if he offered you things for the stuff you had in your inventory. Like if you spent your time collecting and looting and all that stuff, and then you came back to him and he showed you what the stuff you got could get you, instead of having to go take missions to go get the specific things. It's like a scavenger hunt. But hopefully we get more people like that across different factions that can like be a Wicklow type, but for different types of things.
Hopefully. I'm hoping that like Wicklow as the concept, it will fall over to all of the other mission giver sort of factions, so that eventually you'll get stuff from the headhunters. You can only get from the headhunters and so on and so forth. So
yeah, I do think that the community expanded a ton this year because a lot of people came back. There's way more opinions, than not only are there more opinions, but there are a lot of things that are more unknown. I've noticed where maybe 4 or 5 years ago, you might go into a subreddit thread for Star Citizen about some feature, and almost everybody who was in there commenting had some idea of kind of the path forward for that feature or the history of it or kind of just like the background of it. But now I notice there's a lot of people who are getting involved in Star Citizen, but it's more of a casual level. And it feels like that's a good sign that Star Citizen is starting to feel like more people who aren't super, super, super tied into the development can still enjoy the game overall. Were you feeling that this year at all?
Yes. I think this is a year where we first see the casual introduction of casual gamers into Star Citizen. And I think contrary to popular belief, because there's this belief amongst folks, especially the hardcore fans of Star Citizen, that the normies will not adapt to Star Citizen and they won't like Star Citizen. And I think that they fundamentally misunderstand the absolute state of the industry right now, where the best games that are coming out are all being made by companies that are taking risks and doing something different. It's kind of always been the case, but now those people are all independent. So Star Citizen is in such a unique position where it is just nothing like Star Citizen. Better or worse, there's nothing like Star Citizen in period.
Yeah.
And as a result, Star Citizen can appeal to a larger demographic than we think, because people can see what's going on with it. So
how do you feel about in-game interactions? I don't know how often you
I never
jump into global chat. You just never have any.
I turn off global chat immediately. There's so much moderation that's needed for global chat. It's a cesspool. Like they're honestly, I'm surprised CIG's global chat hasn't gotten them in trouble with a government of some kind.
Yeah, people say some bad stuff on there.
They say some straight up illegal stuff. Like you, if a criminal organization wanted to fully like coordinate criminal activity through communication systems, the safest system they have right now is Star Citizen's global chat, because nobody's monitoring it, and like No, they don't seem to get in trouble for anything they say, so whatever.
Leave it to the Star Citizen community to follow up on it if that was happening. What about, yeah, I feel like they really need social tools. Like that's one of the
Yes.
big things that probably is universally being asked for at this point in 2025 is even the things that they're talking about introducing like these strike group teams. And oh my God, don't get me started on beacons. They want us to use beacons for refueling. They're going to want us to use beacons for medical stuff. But you can't talk to anybody.
No. Not again, because
The
the
VoIP isn't even, it's not even reliably working. So, and good God, the amount of people who are like, just use Discord. It's like Discord doesn't talk to other people in the game.
Yeah. I'm not going to get a random Discord, especially these days. I'm not going to go get a random Discord friendship of somebody I don't know, because that's a great way of getting hacked, you know?
Yeah. But the community itself is really kind. I feel like it always has been.
I always feel like it's an outlier where like there are plenty of people in the community who are douches and are awful, but that's such a small, loud part of the community, and the vast majority of the community is very friendly. So yeah, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
I also think that the community itself has gone through some interesting changes over the last year in terms of excitement for the game. I have been doing polls every month for like the last year, I want to say, or so. And I've been like looking at the way that people feel about how the game is going. Generally, I ask them, what are your overall feelings towards the game? And throughout the year, it has ebbed and flowed. It's gone up and down. I think I'll make a video about it at some point. But the most recent one actually shows, I'm putting it on the screen here, shows a pretty good return where 27% of people are saying they're happy, and 11% of people are saying they're not happy. Now, I'm going to pull up the numbers from that same thing, but this is towards the beginning of the year to give you guys
context.
Yeah. So here is, I think this is either February or January. And you can see generally the numbers of people who are just kind of checking it out and the people who are coasting, mostly the same. But the numbers of people happy versus not happy fluctuates a lot. And I do think a lot of that has to do on specifically what's happening that week. But the number of people happy in this most recent poll is much higher than anything else I've seen for the rest of the year. And so I do think that despite the feature slowdown and some of the stranger decisions they've made and maybe some lack of communication, in some places people are getting more satisfied with the game. And ultimately, I think their playability push helped quite a bit.
I think it did too. But honestly, I think it was a combination of playability and just the fact that they pushed a patch every month. The frequency of patch pushes, because I've noticed this in the past, whenever CIG releases a patch, they get a bump. Sometimes it's a small bump, but it's almost always a bump.
That's true.
And that bump usually goes on longer if you have back-to-back patches. And that's been proven. I said that in the past, like that they just need to release more patches if they want more money. They did it this year, and they made more money. Even when ships that were released were not very good or were not very well liked, they still made money.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's if something's happening, it gets people into the game, and it definitely helps. I mean, you're spot on there. The more patches probably helped them get that 150 million, because before that they were at 127. Like, that was their best year before that. Insane. Absolutely crazy. But
I'm just sad. I'm sad they didn't stop at 122, because that would have been very funny. But
142 or 1420.
Yes,
1420. I don't know. Whatever. One last thing before we leave. Actually, I want to ask you about reputation. What is happening? What is going on? Is it still going to be used? Why do I not get to actually be an enemy of a gang in Pyro?
I don't know. But we do know that it's not going anywhere. And in the last monthly report, they specifically said that they're working on the new reputation system. And
true.
Wicklow got a new reputation system this patch. So now you need reputation to be able to even buy stuff for Wicklow. So it's clear that they want to add reputation in. I'm still very worried about the statement that they made at the beginning of the year, where they said that negative reputation was too hard, so we're just removing negative reputation.
Yeah.
I still feel like that's a bad move, because their excuse for it was, well, people were getting a negative reputation and then being locked out of places because they only failed one mission. And it's like, well, that's the problem of scaling the missions, the reputation system, not the problem of the reputation itself, because we know when you go to positive rep, there are different stages you can go from positive rep. Whereas with negative rep, you go a little bit in negative rep and everyone's going to kill you. Mm-hmm. So it should go dislike, hate, and then murder or whatever. There should be stages upon which you have those negative reputations. And of course, those things would require things like higher docking fees, a more dynamic, things like more dynamic,
like pricing for items and stuff.
Yeah. Which would be difficult to do, but not impossible. But the systems aren't in place yet. So
yeah. Oh, that's one to look forward to, I hope. All right, man.
Here's hoping.
Here's been a look at 2025 Year of Playability. Thank you for joining me for this review of everything that has occurred over the last 12 months. Merry Christmas to y'all. Thank you for watching this super long episode if you got all the way to the end of it. And if you want to hear more content and more discussion quite like this, if you could let them know where they could find you.
Twitch.tv/TheAstroPub, and specifically for this, YouTube.com/@TheCaptain'sTablePodcast or the Captain's Table Podcast on Spotify or all other podcasts are. If you want to hear more about lore, you can follow me at YouTube.com/TheAstro Historian. And if you want to see me play the game live, I play it on Twitch, YouTube.com/TheAstroPub Live.
Cool. A lot of channels. I hope you guys are taking notes.
Yeah, not quite as many as Space Tomato, but we're close.
No,
we're getting there.
It's about equal. Don't call me out, man. Thank you, everybody, for watching this episode or listening to it. If you enjoyed, consider subscribing. If you enjoyed it even more, consider liking it. If you enjoyed it the mostest, you could even leave a review on Spotify, because they ask for that, and I don't know, it helps. You can find us on any audio platform if you're not into YouTube, but if so, we appreciate you. Leave a comment down below. Let us know what you thought. And I'll see you all next week.